What's up, people? It's your boy Jatois. I'm here today in Blender. We're going to do some modding for KSP, and keep in mind that this is going to be very beginner-ish. So I'm not the greatest modder in the world at all. I'm pretty new at it still. I can do some modeling. I know how to get things into KSP, and I have a few mods under my belt at the moment. So since it's been requested, I'm going to go ahead and mod another part. This time we're actually going to do a VTOL engine that's going to be inline. So buckle up, and if you have any better ways, any bits of advice, definitely comment down below for this video and share to us all. So let's get started. So I went ahead and imported the Mach 1 cockpit because I need a reference point, and I just want to see how well this is going to look in comparison to it. Now if I wanted, I could come over here and I can move it to where I actually want it to be. So we're just going to change this location, and we're just going to drag the entire thing up some, so that way we have a little reference point. If you're wondering how I did that, there is a script that you can use that lets you import move files, KSP move files, and that is what I use to get this part in here. So if you have any questions on that, definitely ask in the comments down below, and I can direct you on how to get that going. This is Blender 2.7.9, by the way. I have not yet finished switching over to 2.8. So let's go ahead and create our new part. So we're just going to go for a straight cylinder, and right now it's way too big. But we need to go ahead and go over to here to scene, and we're going to set our length to metric. Alright, now that that's done, let's go back to our part, and we're actually going to shrink this down. So this right now is set to 2 meters. We need to set this to 1.25, so we're in the Mach 1 sizes here. And now we can drag our cockpit down. Now if you are okay with this, that's great. I feel like this is a bit long, so I'm going to scale it down a bit more. I can actually go 0.65, and which is going to be half of what it currently is, and that's going to get us down to the Mach 0. I can't remember what they call it now, the mini parts. So this is a small VTOL engine. It's not supposed to be huge, so we're not trying to go with a really huge overpowered part right now. But of course, since it's going to be a pure engine, it's going to be all electric. So that right there, that looks pretty good. I kind of like how that looks size wise. So what we need to do now is actually go here, and we need to start crafting our part a bit better. So let's go ahead and first save, and we're going to call this pure VTOL inline engine. Okay, so the last one we just really did a cone. This time we're going to go a little bit more advanced, and this inline one is going to be what's going to make it look really good. So we're going to go ahead and hit tab to go into edit mode, and we're going to come here and we're going to go to loop, cut, and slide. We're going to go like this, and then we're going to drag this one up here right to about 90. And if you don't get it exact, you can come over here and just click on that and type in 90 cm. Just make sure you leave the cm in there, and we're going to do the same thing on this opposite side here. Once again, we're just going to go negative 90 cm. And that's going to give us our nice little area. That's going to be our connection area where everything's going to snap to. Because we're going to start taking out parts of this so we can actually have an open area for our exhaust and whatnot to actually get through. So let's go ahead, and I like to do the first 4 or 6 because that's going to give you a nice exhaust area. And I'm going to delete these faces. So delete faces. And now you can come over to the other side. I'm just kind of basing it off of my y-axis. And you see it's right here. And that's where I'm counting on either side from. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So 2 per side. And we can go ahead and delete that face too. So now we have this nice open area. So what we need to do now is we need to come in here, and I guess up top we can put like a fan, and down below we can put a nozzle. So let's go ahead and press tab. So we come back out. And now since we did a cutaway of this, it's no longer solid. It's now, all these walls are now going to be transparent in Unity. So we're going to fix that by going over here, going to modifiers, add modifier, and we are going to go to solidify. And that is going to fix the issue with everything being transparent in Unity, because now it's back to a solid. Alright, so let's go ahead and see if we can rig up something that's going to look really good. So up top is going to be our intake. So we need to create a sort of intake for this. I think a good intake is going to be either a torus or a cylinder. So let's see what we can do here. Let's open up another cylinder. We're going to test this out. We're going to rotate it by pressing R and then pressing X to lock it into the X axis, and rotate it by typing in 90 on our keypad. And now we're going to press S to scale this thing on down. And then press G so we can move it around, and then Y to lock it into our Y axis. And now we can actually just move it up and down like so. And you see right here, it's still quite big. We're going to get it so it's just on the inside of this cutout that we did. Now there are ways to cut out to cut a circle out from a square or a different mesh, but you know what, I'm pretty terrible at that, so we're going to use my cheat method today. We're going to scale this to Y now that we have our size. Alright, and because what we're going to do is we're actually going to drag part of this down, so it's going to look like it's taking intakes in and pushing it into our engine. So scale it a little bit more, and then using G we're just going to move it so it's back within here, slightly inset. Now you can see we are right now, it's not looking exactly great because we have this huge area. If you had an intake, you wouldn't want to have a huge area with it to where it is actually grabbing things from, and we will fix that momentarily. What we want to do right now is go to edit mode. We're going to go to face, and we're going to delete this face, just the top face. The bottom face can stay, because we're going to insert a fan there so you can see when it's on or off, and we're going to play around with some animations to see if we can make that happen. And once again, since we did some cutting, we're going to go to solidify, and we're going to solidify that. so far so good. Alright, so this is actually, I'm actually going to combine these two. And that's so, because I really want to take the face of this here and the face of this here, and I want to kind of close up this area. And we're going to try to do that. We're going to try. We're going to see how well I can do this. So let's go ahead and select them both. Holding shift, I'm going to select both of these. So select the first one, hold shift, select the second one, and I should have them both selected now. And we're going to go to tools and we're going to join. So now they're both joined into one object, so I can go in here and press tab and edit them both at the same time. Sweet, so far so good. Alright, so we need to start selecting some edges. I'm going to select this edge and I'm holding shift and I'm just selecting all these edges that are on this initial area. And then I'm going to start selecting the ones on our intake. You just take your time. The worst thing to do is to misclick. Alright, I'm almost there. Alright, so we have all this selected. So how do we close this up? Press F. Let's see if it does it right. Well, it was close. So what I see here is that that isn't going to work in the way that I was hoping. But that's okay. I have a way around that. We're going to use another loop cut and slide. And this one, we're going to move up to right where we want to stop filling this line in. No? So I'm just pressing G and I'm trying to line it up right there. So I see right about 75. Except for I'm supposed to be here on the Z. So right about 15. It looks like, yeah, it's right about 15. Alright. And since I goofed up and I did this super late, I'm gonna have to do it down here as well. It's just, this is my dumb fault. So once again, let's do that down here. And it's gonna be -15. Now, since it's already cut, we gotta do this on the other side. So let's go ahead and knock that out. Once again, this is just 15. And over here, loop cut slide, and then -15. Once you get the numbers down, it gets really easy. So I try to use whole numbers as much as possible. Alright, so let's try this again. Alright. We're gonna try to do our fill method. And start selecting all these. As long as you're relatively close, it should select the right one. Okay, let's see how well this works this time. And that was exactly what we were going for, a nice little fill. So now that area is closed in. Alright, so now we just need to do the same thing on this other side down low. And then we should be able to move on. Now, of course, it looks like it went in some, which I mean is okay. It filled it in. It did exactly what we wanted, so we're just gonna roll with it for right now. You can see sometimes I'm not even clicking directly on the line, just in the general vicinity of it, as close as I can. And oops, not mean to click that one. If you click the wrong one, just click on it again and it should go away. Alright. There you go. Just press F as in Frank. And that should fill it on in. And now you have this nice little intake. And it's a little classy. I like that. So we can actually go in here and put like a little faux fan in here that's just spinning around, and that's going to look pretty decent. So let's go here. Let's go to faces. And we're going to press E to extrude. And we're going to come up a little bit. And we're going to shrink it down by pressing S to scale. Because what I'm doing here is giving myself a nice little area for my fan to actually go to. And that fan's going to need this nice little pin to spin on. And now we're going to press E to extrude. And then we need to lock it to Z. So press Z. And we're just going to drag this up like so. Don't worry about if it's too high, because we can always press G and then Z to move it back down. Or G and then Y to move it back down. So that should be pretty good there. So now all we have to do is put like a little spinning fan there, and that's going to look pretty good. And that was just using F. That was just utilizing F to fill and using our edge selection to actually fill in the area and to give us a pretty decent looking intake. Alright, so what we need to do now is go in here, select this face. We're going to extrude this out once again. And then I'm going to scale it down a little bit. And from here, I'm going to actually stop there because I'm going to take some pipes and bring some pipes down into kind of like an engine block. And then that engine block's going to then connect into a nozzle. So let's go ahead and get our fake engine block in here and then run some fake piping and then run our gimbal point and then our nozzle. So let's go ahead and create all those. So first we're going to use a cube. Our cube is going to be our engine block. And we're just going to go, like I said, really simple here. Nothing super complex. We're just going to scale it out only on our x-axis. Like so. We're actually going to scale it back a little bit, because I want our pipe work to actually be going through everything. This is just going to be secured to the top and bottom, so we can actually shrink this entire thing down a little bit. Alright, so for our pipes, we're going to make a cylinder. We're going to rotate this on the y-axis 90 degrees and shrink it on down, because we need some pipe work to be going through here. So now what you're seeing is it's currently inside of our engine block. We're just going to press G and then press Y, and that's going to let us drag this out. And now we're going to shrink it down some more, just so we have some nice little pipe work going through here, and scale it on the X. Alright, so now we have some pipe work going here to make it look like we're actually passing everything through. But keep in mind that right now we are looking at it, up down. So I need to rotate this on its y-axis 90 degrees and then bring that size down. So let's scale to here and then scale Z and then bring it in. So it disappears within our edge walls, but doesn't go all the way through. And we kind of want to move this because this would be in the way of our nozzle. So GX, and we're just going to move it over to the side, and then GY, we're going to move it closer to our engine block. And if you want to see how that looks all inside, you can press Z when you're not editing anything, and that's going to show you how well it's going to look within the chassis so far. And you can kind of get a better positioning on it. So if I want, I can press Shift D and create a duplicate, and then just press Enter or Escape just to make it not move, and then press G and then X, and I can move it around if I want. Or I can just come up to location and go to the X location and add a negative up top. And that's going to create a duplicate one right there. Alright, so what we need to do now is we actually need to make our little gimbal point, and we also need to make our intake air pass through. So let's get cracking on that. So let's go ahead and do our intake here. So for the intake, we're just going to go ahead and come here. Let's press Z again so we can see what everything looks like so far. Pretty good. Let's go ahead and create a new cylinder. And we're going to rotate this one on our x-axis. So RX 90. And now we need to scale it down, so press S and then drag it on down. So this one is really not going to be that far. So let's press Z so we can see everything here. And now we can press G and then we can press Y and kind of move it more into place. And now we can scale it back a bit. So we're going to move it kind of midway between everything, just watching our center point there, and moving it midway between our engine block and our intake. So now we can press scale, so S, and then Y, and scale everything back so it's just about there. And now we can press S for scale, and then Shift Y. That's going to allow us to scale everything except for our Y axis. And then we can kind of bring this down like so. So that way it's coming in contact with both our intake as well as our engine block. And we can press G, Y, and kind of just move it as needed so it looks pretty good in there. So let's press Z and see how we look. It's hidden in there, and it's tucked away in there. Pretty good. And that's going to be our intake pass-through. You see, we're going into a bit more detail than we did last time. So this is kind of our LFO pass-throughs, and that way we can actually, if we wanted to, we can mark these liquid fuel oxidizer, or since this is pure, it's just going to be electric charge. So it can be whatever resource you wanted in here. So we need to make like a chassis for our gimbal point to kind of sit within. So we're going to select our current engine block, press Shift D to duplicate it, G and then Y so we can move it down some more. And now we need to squish it down, so we're going to press S and then X. So we press S and then X to bring it down some more. Alright, so that gives us our gimbal point here. We need to shrink this down a little bit because it still looks a little big. So scale, so S and then Y, and bring it in. And then G and then Y, and we're going to push it back so it's just touching our engine block. So it's like an extension of our engine block. Now if you wanted, you can also use the cylinder for this. It might look a little better. But for me, I kind of like the way it looks, having the block and then setting a UV sphere within it. So we're going to go ahead and take our torus, because I want something for it to kind of sit within, and rotate this one on its X 90, and then we're going to scale it way down. Drag that out Y and set that right there. So scale shift Y, and that's going to let us do this. Scale it right there, and I'm not worried about this part since it's not going to have any colliders. Usually torus I try to avoid, but it should be fine. And now we need a UV sphere, and we're going to shrink this one right on down. It's going to be like our little gimbal point, and we're going to drag that out once again using Y. And shrink it down a little bit more so it shows within our connector. And make sure it's not showing anywhere else. Okay, now if you're thinking UVs, yes, this would be a lot of work for UVs. So we're not doing UVs today, don't worry. UVs will come in another video. That is going to be a lot of interesting fun since I hate UVs. But anyhow, let's go ahead and make our cone. So we're going to use a cylinder. Rotate this one on X 90, shrink it on down, drag it on out, and now we get to make our cone. So we're going to shrink it on the Y. And now we're going to move everything back. Scale it down a little bit more. So we're right there on there. Okay. Just making sure we are inside of our chassis here. We're going to want it to be just peeking out on the outside. So let's scale it out a little bit more on the Y. Drag it out. See where we're at. And that's okay. So let's hit tab so we can go into edit mode. Click on the face. So we're on face edit mode here. And now we're actually going to drag this back. Pressing G and then Y. And we're just going to gently drag that back so it's just within our chassis. Now this one we're going to leave a bit more wide open. We filled in this one. We're going to leave this one a bit more wide open. We can actually cut in these walls a bit more so it's closer to our area here, but we want to leave some area for a gimbal. So we're not going to do but so much on this side. Alright, so what we want to do now is press E to extract. We're going to go up a little bit, press S and scale it back down. And then we'll press E again to extrude, and then press S to scale it down. Now we can press G and then Y and then drag it on back. And this is going to give us our cone. Just to right in front of where it pokes through for our gimbal point. Alright, so now we have our nice little cone here. If you want, you can go to edge select, and then you could hold Alt and then right click on that edge there, and you can actually move this around too. So G and then Y, and you can move this so you have a bigger nozzle. That looks pretty good. Alright, and you can do the same thing here. G, Y, and move that down a little bit. I just want to have that inside a little bit more, so it's not exactly poking all the way through. That looks pretty good. Alright, so about these walls right here, they are a bit wide out there, huh? So let's go ahead and go to face select, and we're going to try to bring all this in a little bit. I'm just going to press Control and then scroll my wheel down. Hold Shift and that'll give you up and down. Control will give you left and right, so you can get a better visual of what you're using. Alright. So maybe we can use an extrude individual to make this happen. Let's see. That looks like it might work. We're gonna have to drag it back some, but that should be fine. So G, Y, and then just bring it in a little bit. It's very close to where we want it to be. Maybe we can scale X to bring it back a little bit. And that gives us a little closed up door, a little bit more. We're going to do the same thing up top here. We're going to extrude individual and then close this up a little bit. Not a lot, just enough so it looks okay. And you can see we didn't get this to an exact science here. So we can actually select this. If these edges really do bother you, you can select all this and then GY, hold Shift and then gently nudge them back until they're closed in properly. And there you go, we've closed that in. And now you can actually go here, and if you still have it selected, because it'll remember what you last had selected, press G, Y, and you can bring your nozzle out. Just so it's just on the outside, so when it fires off, you know, you won't catch everything on fire. Of course, it's not going to happen in the game, but just saying. So far so good. So only thing that's really left, I mean, you can't really see much in here, so all this is really just for aesthetics. So only thing we really need to do now is do our fan. And fans are kind of fun, so let's save. Okay, so for our fan we are going to go, and I actually used to go here to plane, and I rotate this on the X, 90, shrink that down, Z. Planes are very interesting because you do have to solidify them, but you can actually quickly come in here and reshape them, which is good. So let's go ahead, hit tab, and we need to now go into our vertex select, and we need to go here and loop cut, and we're going to put a cut right there in the middle. Vertex select, select the top and bottom, and then rotate X, and you see we can actually rotate this, but we need to first put another loop cut here. So loop cut here on the middle, and then we need to figure out where we want our blades to stop being angled. So I think -25 is a nice decent whole number. Same thing on the other side. Alright, and still in vertex select, just grab this, hit shift, grab the other one, rotate on X, and now we can just kind of turn this however way we want to turn it. And just kind of watch how far you're doing it. So rotate X and let's say 20. And that'll work. And then up here, same thing, rotate X except for -20. And now you have your little fan blade. And you can also GX and then GX negative. Alright, so not -5. GX and then drag this back a little bit so you have a little point. And we're just gonna make this 90. And then do the same thing here. GX and then come here and then make this -90. Very pointy, very sharp, but it'll be okay. And now we have like a little fan blade. It'll work. It will work. We can scale this down, or we can duplicate it. So let's duplicate it. Shift D. Now rotate on the Y-axis by pressing Y and then 90. And now we have our fan blades. Of course, you don't want it to be looking like this, so let's press G and then Y and move this one down underneath of it so it's not overlapping like it was and looking hideous. So let's select them both, and we're going to actually go here to join them together. Well, that looks pretty good. Now we can actually come here and scale it all down, and then press G, Y, and move it into our chassis area here for our intake. And I almost got it exactly on. Not bad. And I'm gonna scale it up on our Y-axis. It's still a plane, genius. So let's go to Add Modifier and Solidify. Apply. Okay, now scale Y, and we should be able to either scale or just go to it and extrude. And you see, I want to do this because I want to take up some of this fan blade area and extrude on our Y-axis and just come up a bit, not too much. So now our fan blade looks a little more beefy. We can come here to our chassis, press tab, and if you want to move this up and down, you definitely can, just to kind of, so it's not excessive. What I want to do here is extrude it a little bit and then scale it out so it looks like a little pins there. And that'll keep it, that would be like the Jesus nut, I think they call it, Jesus pin on a helicopter. GY, and then just kind of move it so it's lined up on that pin. Oh, I just hit H. And now if you hit H, you can come here and unhide it. I do that all the time. I need a new keyboard. My keys are starting to wear through, but I love this keyboard. So G, Y, and then move it so it's almost in contact there. So that looks pretty good. So let's look at what we have here. We have our engine block, our gimbal points, we have our intakes. It looks pretty dang decent. So we're about ready to move this over to Unity. But first we need to do our animation. And our animation is going to be really simple. We're just going to take this and we're just going to do 100. And we're going to start here. So let's make sure we have our fan blade selected. Press I and then select rotation. Alright, and let's go to the end. Just by clicking on this little end, jump to last frame. And now we're going to select our rotation. So if you see here, you can press R to rotate it and then Y to lock it into the Y axis. And this is how you want to rotate. So you want to have a decent enough rotation so it looks realistic. So here's the catch, is that if you spin it too fast, it's gonna look terrible. If you spin it too slow, it's gonna look very slow. No matter which way we spin this, it's not going to look like a blur disc like you get from Fire Spitter. So we're just gonna go ahead and simulate 3 rotations. So that would be, you should bring up your calculator here. We want to go 360, and you can do times 5, and that's going to give us 1800. So what we want to do is actually take that down by 1, so when it hits the end, it's returning to its origination point. So 1800 minus 1, 1799. So we just go here and then come here and then type in 1799, enter, and press I and lock the rotation in. Once you see that yellow line show up, you are locked in. All this should turn yellow. So let's go to the very beginning and let's hit play. And you'll see right here, it looks pretty good. Now, if yours is getting to the end and then slowing down and then starting the loop again, go up here, choose your screen layout, go to animation, go to channel, and go to extrapolation mode and change it to linear extrapolation. And now you can go back to your default and you'll see it should now have a nice smooth animation. So from here we are ready to go over to Unity. So let's go ahead and click on File, Export, and if you haven't already, you can select your cockpit if you did indeed import a cockpit, and you can actually delete its hierarchy. I've already done so. So we can come here, go to Export, and then select FBX because we have animations. And then export FBX. And you are ready to rock. So let's jump over to Unity. Okay, so in Unity what we need to do is we need to come in here and drag our part on in. So take your Blender model and drag it right on into here. Once you have that done, select your part and you'll see it all right here. You can actually take a look at your entire thing. Make sure you don't have any meshes that are, if you turn, they go invisible, because that would be wrong. So what you want to do here is go to rig, set your rig to legacy. It's going to be generic. Set it to legacy and then hit apply, and then go to animations, set your name. You want to actually test this out first. You can see what it's going to look like here. And that's our intake spin. Alright, hit pause. Name it to whatever you would like. In my case, I named it Prop Spin Intake. And then hit apply. So once we have that done, we can actually grab this and... Nope, not that one. Grab this one. Or except for not that one. We have too many parts. We can grab this one and drag it onto our scene. Alright, so taking a look at this, we actually need to do one more thing to our part before we go any further. Click back on your part, go to model, and then set read write enabled, check that off and hit apply. This is going to let you use the mesh collider later on. So jumping back to our scene, we need to unpack this, because if we were to double click on this, that's what it's going to do, because we have in here our lamp and our camera. We need to remove those. So we're going to go ahead, select unpack prefab just by right clicking on it and selecting unpack prefab, selecting lamp and selecting camera, and then pressing delete. Now when we double click, it's going to take us just to our part. And now we can see we have a little problem, because Z pointing down is actually where we want our engine to be pointing. So to fix this, we need to rotate all of this inside of our part. So if we right click on our part name and create empty, we'll have our nice little game object it creates as a child. So we're going to select all of this, and we're just going to drag it right into our game object. Now we can take our game object and rotate this one on its y-axis 180. And I know it still looks the same. It looks like, oh no, our intake's still pointing on Z, but when you click on your main object, there you go. So our intake is now on the top, our exhaust, our nozzle is on the bottom, and everything is ready to rock. So things we need to do now. We need to add in our thrust transform, we need to add in an intake and a gimbal. So to do so, what we need to do first is we can select our intake, and that's going to be based off of our plane. So now as that one rotates, it's going to be interesting. So we're not going to select that one exactly. We're going to actually base it off of our chassis. So here on the chassis, we have a few things to do. We need to go ahead and create an empty here. And this is going to be called intake. And now we need to go to our intake and drag that out, and we're actually going to rotate this. I think RCS is on our y-axis. I believe intake is RZ. I can't remember exactly. To tell you the truth, we're going to rotate this 190. So either which way, since it's far enough out from our chassis, it should have an intake. And now we need to come to here to our nozzle and create another empty and call this one this thrust transform. This one does fire to our Z down, so we need to rotate on our Y 180, and then we need to drag this down so it's outside of our nozzle. Looks good. Last one we need to do, last child we need to do is come in here and select our sphere and create one more empty, and this is going to be our gimbal. And we're going to rotate this one on its X, -90, so it's our Z's pointing down, and we're going to drag this ever so slightly so it's at the end of our sphere, and that's where our gimbal action would happen. Alright, so far so good. Now there's a few things we need to do. We need to add a collider in here, so let's add physics, and this is why we did our read write earlier, mesh collider convex. And we can also go in here and you can do a secondary collider if you want, like a little capsule, and then edit it so that way when you are in here messing around, you will be able to get a nice little grab on it in the game, in the editor I should say. And I'm just kind of trying to make sure it's just inside. And you'll be able to tell because the color actually changes slightly. I believe that's about as close as I'm gonna get right here. And so that'll give you that little design. Not too shabby. And now we need to go in here and go to our animation. This needs to move. So let's copy component. Go to our game object. We can put anything in here. It doesn't really matter. We're just going to remove whatever we put in here. So we're just going to throw a capsule collider. And now right click in here. And then paste component as new. And then get rid of whatever we put in there. And then uncheck play automatically. Now go back to our main object here and remove this from here. And let's now add component, KSP, and then part tools. And don't forget to save. Now you can call this whatever you would like. Pure VTOL Inline ENG, and then write. Because this should be everything you need. You have your colliders, you have your intake, you have your thrust transform, make sure you spelled it right, and your gimbal. Also take note your capitalization. Blah. And that should be it. You're now ready to create your configuration file. So let's jump and do that. Now what you do want to do here is actually add in a plane. So 3D object plane. So we're going to drag this up here and see exactly where the edge is. And we can fiddle with these numbers a little bit. So we can say 5, 3. You can see we're still, alright, so we can actually still use these. So it's going to be 2. So 313 is going to be our top and bottom since we centered everything. A nice way to check is to come here, home, and then go like that. You can actually rotate this on its X 180 just to make sure it still looks fine. So 313 on our Y-axis is what we are looking for. So you can go ahead and delete your plane. And let's create our config file. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is our config file. Well, we're going to start with our Panther engine because it is a pretty good engine to work with. And we're just going to go ahead and select everything there. And if you're wondering where that engine is, if you go to your KSP, game data, go over to squad, and then go to parts, and then engine, and then jet engines. It is the jet engine afterburning. So we select everything here, copy, and paste it onto here. So a few things we can do. We want to always keep our end tag, and you'll see that one is here. 611 is our end tag. So let's go ahead and select all this because we don't really care about this module test subject, and delete it. And here, this is the sounds. So these sound effects, we actually, for Pure, I have my own sound effects pack. So I'm actually going to take theirs and I'm going to remove it. And this is more of their effects. Sound effects, all sound effects. And it's gone. So this is our surface effects. We can leave this on, just one of them. We don't need both. And it's focused on the thrust transform, so we can actually leave that alone. And here, this is an alternator. We don't want the alternator because we actually consume electrical charge in order to generate thrust in Pure. So we like to remove that one. We have this constrained position. We don't need that. Module gimbal, we're going to keep. So this thing's going to have the agility of a Panther and its gimbal. Animate throttle, we actually do want this, but we only want one. So we're going to keep this, but we just need to change it from the animation to our animation. So our animation, once again, is named prop spin intake. So let's change this to prop spin intake. Alright, and it's going to depend on our engine name, which theirs is locked into dry, and that's not too shabby. We're actually going to go ahead and remove our wet engine because the Panther is a multi-mode engine. So let's go ahead and remove this multi-mode module as well, because we are only going to use one mode for now. And here it's still locked into thrust transform. It has max thrust of 85. We'll leave that alone. Heat, we'll knock that down to 10. Engine reaction time, we'll leave all that alone. Looks pretty decent. Intake air, we can leave that one. And liquid fuel, we'll change this to electric charge. Once again, this is for Pure. And if you're wondering what Pure is, it is a mod that uses electric charge to generate thrust for its engines. Some people are saying, oh my god, that's so mythical, but there's actually an engine out there now, a jet engine, that does about the same thing, so I'm just ahead of the game. Alright, we have our animation, our gimbal, our surface effects. So it is basically ready to go. We really just need to go ahead and rename some of these things. This is going to be Pure VTOL Inline Eng 1. Leave module alone. This is PorkJet, who is like super awesome, amazing. But we're not PorkJet by far. So we're going to change this to JDSA. Here's our mesh. We're actually going to use this mesh call. So we're going to uncomment that out. If you see anything like this, it's commented out. So we're just going to remove some of these. And we're not using this model call, so we're going to remove that. And now we need to do our node stacks. Since we're inline, we're going to have 2. And remember, we are on our y-axis. We also don't need our com offsets. We can delete that. So we are at 0, 3, 1, 3 on our y. So x, y, z. And this one is x, y, z. So you can put a little space in here if it helps you keep things organized. But we need to change this to 313. This 313, except for this one is negative and bottom. And this one is now negative. This one stays positive. So we should have X, Y, Z, and then X, Y, Z. And that's it for that. So we need to change our mesh over to our mesh. And to do that, we need to go and grab our mesh. So KSP modding, we're going to go over to 18 plus export. This is just where I have my export set to. And we're going to grab our exported part here and make sure that that's the one I named. Pure VTOL Inline Eng. And I'm just going to cut this. I'm going to delete this one because it's going to confuse me later. Now we can actually go to here. I actually have a folder I created under here in anticipation of creating this engine. So we're just going to go to our folder and we are going to delete this one. I'm going to reuse this EC9. So I'm going to actually grab some of the parts from here, some of the sound effects, because it's already created for my pack. So to do that, you just have to put everything in your right locations. You see here I have these folders pre-configured. So JDSA, KSP magneto drive, sounds, mags, and then all my sound effects are there. So since I have that pre-configured, I just want to reuse it because it saves me a little bit of time. Sounds are nothing more than just putting things in the right location and then calling over to them, so it's nothing overly complex. And then making sure that everything's calling over to these. So running turbine, I think I need to switch running turbine over. So this one is commented out, so I'm going to get rid of it. And so you have your power effect. You have your flame out effect, which is flame out. Power effect, which is power dry. We're going to switch this over to running turbine. We have engage, disengage, and then running dry. So let's separate these out a little bit so we can make sure that everything's selected here. We have flame out, we have engage, and then we have a disengage and running turbine. So we just want to make sure, and there we go. I messed that up. So let's fix this real quick. Okay, so running turbine actually needs to go here. This one can actually get deleted because we're not going to use it. So let's go running turbine and drop this into here. So now when it's running, it'll have that sound. When it's engaged, you'll have this. Disengaged, you'll have that. And that should be fine. So we also need to add an intake because we don't have an intake for this. So let's go to parts again and let's see if we can find our intake resource. And I'm guessing, let's try arrow. Yep, there's our intakes. So we can switch this to our circular intake. And you'll see here, module resource intake. This is what we're going to copy out. And we're also going to grab some of these intakes here. So we're just going to copy this. And we're going to go to our new. And we're going to put this right up top here. So that way it has intake. And it's going to check that first. So you can either use 15. I'm going to boost this up to 40. So we don't have an issue with our intake. And let's go ahead and give us a quick save. So let's go to game data. Let's go to GDSA, Magneto, VTOL. And we're just going to name this EC9 VTOL. And switch this to all types because we want it to be a CFG. And there you go. There's our engine. We do need to rename some of these parts here. I'm going to actually take this, delete it. The reason I do that is because I'm just going to reuse my failed one from earlier. This was my test run. I had a fun little test run and it went interesting. So we're not going to use that. All right. Heat conductivity is deleted. Some of these are just placeholders from previous ones. This is going to be cleaned up to just pure and VTOL. All right, and that should be it. Now with spinny things. Note, keep fingers away. Okay, so crash tolerance is a bit low. We're gonna up that to 15. And that should be about everything we need to do here. Just checking all of our modules, making sure everything is right. Prop spin intake. Engine name is dry. Let's make sure our engine name is still dry. Cool, didn't make that change. Gimbal is set to gimbal, properly spelled, capitalized properly. Thrust transforms, all done properly. And all of our effects are encapsulated here properly, and we still have our end tag. So there you go, we are ready to rock. So let's go ahead and minimize this. Let's go back to our folder. So JDSA, EC9, and we can actually, I could just delete this old one. I don't need it anymore, which is going to cause Notepad to have a little bit of a fit, but it's okay. And now we're ready to launch the game and test our part. Exciting! Alright, so it's time to see if we did this right. Let's go to engine, hopefully it loaded. I see this pure white part, that's us, because we don't have any UVs done. Everything looks good so far. Nozzles in the right direction. Intakes in the right direction. Looking pretty good. And you see we actually can't place anything on here, which I'm not exactly okay with. I want things to be placed on here, so I need to fix that. And I think that's just our config, that's just our attachment. So easy fix. So let's go ahead and turn on our SAS. Let's turn on our generators. These aren't really going to trigger because I forgot that they don't have any. Oh wait, we do have fuel. Okay, I was worried. I was like, wait, we don't have fuel. I did put fuel in here. Smart guy. All right, let's turn on our engines and let's set these up. And you see we have a little spin going on, and we need to throttle this one down. And we have our ground effects showing. Pretty cool. We're slowly leaving the ground, balancing. Looks pretty good right there. Now we can actually set our fans to spin faster if we wanted. Oh, let's not go too far down. Thank you. But yeah, there you go. It's currently working. So really all that's left is to do a little tweaking and getting everything to react the way we want and to not crash our aircraft. So if you're ever wondering how to do this, you can always go to the wiki for Kerbal Space Program, to the CFG file documentation, and here you can search for things like attach rules, and it's going to tell you exactly how to do what. So in this instance, we have for our part 101. So that means stack and allow stack. Does not allow for surface attach, which is fine. Allow for surface attach is currently set to no. So we need to set this to 1, and that's going to allow us to put parts on our part that we just created. I'm noticing here, I never did change that from turbojet. So I actually need to come here and change this to this. Alright, so thinking about some other engines that actually utilize a spinning fan, you can go back into parts, engine, jet engines, and then you have your jet engine big. It has a fairly large spinning part in there. This is your, if you're wondering, this is the Goliath turbofan. So this one has this nice little fan that spins. You'll see in here they have documented what is going to happen. So right now the animation wrap mode is set to loop. That is actually what we want to do on ours. This one is a great example of what we want and how we want ours to react. We're going to grab all of this in here underneath our animation name and copy. Go to EC9 VTOL and we're going to go to our module, and you'll see here it's not set to that because that's really just the nozzle that it's using. And we're going to go all the way up to the response speed and paste that in. So now we have all of this preset in here. Save. And that should fix our spinning. So let's reload our database one more time. Now if we don't see it spinning, it just means we probably need to take it back to our hanger and then to our editor and then put the part on again. So let's see, and you see right there it's spinning back up, and that looks good to me. Got our effects, got our spin, we have our sounds, give you a nice little sound effect test. Alright, you hear it cut on. Let's turn this up a little bit. I love that sound effect. Alright, so we're armed. Let's go ahead and lift off. You hear our engine kick on, kick up. And we're off the ground. Our intakes are spinning. This looks really good. And we can take our little VTOL and try not to crash. That might be a bit much gimbal on here. I think I may have to take down that gimbal a lot because right now it is very strong on the gimbal side. But yeah, there you go. You have a VTOL engine that has its own little fan intake, and it's able to handle pretty well. From here, it's all about balancing out the craft, and then of course UVs, which is my favorite thing to do. But yeah, that is the start of your VTOL engine. Really quick, really simple animation so you can see it's running. And yes, this is the start of something beautiful. So for now, I'm gonna get on out of here. This is your boy Jatois. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, comments, tips, drop them in the comments down below. Let me know what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong, and if this helped you out any. And I hope to catch you guys in the next video. For now, this is your boy Jatois, and I'm out. Peace. And I really like this engine, so I'm definitely going to have to do the UVs on it because it's going to be a great addition to the Pure family. I just got to fix that gimbal.